Greetings and welcome to another Pokemon 2019 or Pokemon Journeys anime episode review. This time I'm talking about episode 68, so let's get to it. Episode 68 begins in Pallet Town. Ash and Goh arrive at Professor Oak's lab. This is surprising since most episodes start in Ceres Institute or Ceres Park, and they show us what makes Ash and Goh travel to the place they go to in the episode in question. But this time, they decided to dive straight into the good stuff by skipping the setup, which is nice, because more time is allotted to what actually matters, though it is still not enough time. So Professor Oak greets Ash and Goh and they'll proceed to catch up inside the lab. Goh then gives Professor Oak some documents that Professor Cerise sent over, which I assume is the reason why Ash and Goh are here. Ash wonders if Goh has been to Professor Oak's lab before, and Goh says that when he was 6 years old, he participated in the Pokemon camp that Professor Oak hosted. This was shown in episode 1 of Pokemon Journeys. Goh mentions that they were delayed by someone who was late, and Ash says that there are people like that. The person in question probably overslept. Ash then stops when he realizes that this sounds familiar, and Professor Oak jokes that perhaps this person was Ash. And indeed, it was Ash, as shown in episode 1 of Pokemon Journeys. So it is ironic that Ash said all of this without realizing that he is the very person he was talking about. Goh then says that he met Mew during the camp and this gave him his dream, which he shares with Professor Oak, who wonders how many Pokemon Goh has caught thus far. Goh shows his Pokedex to Professor Oak, who is amazed to see that Goh has caught so many Pokemon, but he is especially surprised when he sees that Goh caught Suicune. Professor Oak then mentions Project Mew, which is a team that is being put together with the objective of searching for Mew. Said team is currently gathering members, but any applicants have to first complete a certain number of trials and missions to gain entry into the project. Professor Oak wonders if Goh would be interested in participating in Project Mew. If so, Professor Oak could give him a recommendation, but Goh turns down the offer, saying that he does not really like being part of a team and that the trials and missions that you have to complete to enter the team do not sound appealing either. Now this did bother me because Goh has no ambition. He is always going on and on about his dream and he proudly talks about it whenever he has the chance. And now that he is presented with a way to progress towards said dream in a direct and reliable way, he refuses. Now if he said something cool like I want to achieve my dream my own way or on my own, then I would be like, okay, that's fine, but nope. Goh refused because he does not like interacting with other people and he also shies away from things that are difficult. He does not want to actually try. He just wants to do things the easy way, meaning that he just wants to throw a Pokeball at all of his problems and trials. Professor Oak says that it is a shame that Goh refused the offer because the project would give him a chance to meet other trainers that share his dream, but he won't force Goh to do anything. Professor Oak then tells Ash that his Pokemon have been waiting to see him, so Ash goes to see his Pokemon. He reunites with Bulbasaur and Charizard first, which is of course a very nostalgic and exciting moment. Now it is weird that Charizard does not give Ash the usual flamethrower greeting. This is actually the first time that Charizard does not use flamethrower on Ash when they reunite. Ash is then surrounded by most of his Pokemon, which brought a big smile to my face. Ash's Tauros soon come running to greet Ash as well, and I love that all the other Pokemon get out of the way of the stampede, leaving Ash and Pikachu alone. They are both launched into the air by the Tauros stampede, but when they fall, Mach catches both of them and then Mach proceeds to do what it always does whenever it sees Ash. Unlike Charizard, Mach does stick to tradition. Now it's worth noting that while most of Ash's Pokemon do appear in this episode, there are several Pokemon that do not make an appearance, and I am only referring to the Pokemon that Ash has at Professor Oak's lab. So I am not counting the Pokemon that Ash released, or the Pokemon that he has in training, or the Pokemon that he left with Professor Kukui. So, Kingler is absent, Noctowl is the only Johto Pokemon that is not present. None of Ash's Hoenn Pokemon appear except for Corphish. None of his Sinnoh Pokemon appear apart from Weasel and Infernape. Oshawott, Pignite, and Crocodile are the only Unova Pokemon that appear. So there are several notable exceptions like Sceptile, Gible, Gliscor, Swellow, Staraptor, and Leavanny, to name a few. It is odd that so many Pokemon are absent because you would think that all of Ash's Pokemon would want to see him if he returns to the lab. So it does not make sense that some of them would not show up, and thus I wonder if maybe they were deliberately excluded because there would just be too many Pokemon on screen. It is interesting that at least one of every generation appears here, excluding generations 7 and 8, since Ash does not keep any of his Pokemon from these generations at Professor Oak's lab. I doubt that the writers forgot about the Pokemon that were excluded, so again, I wonder why they did not appear, and it is a shame that they are absent. Ash goes on to say that he is glad because all of his Pokemon look happy. Professor Oak then says that there is one point of concern though. He has not seen Infernape in several days. He got worried when Infernape did not appear when it was time to eat. So he and Tracy decided to search for Infernape, but they could not find him. Now, two things to note here. First, I think that Professor Oak should also be worried about Sceptile, Gible, and the other Pokemon that did not appear in this episode because maybe they are missing as well, which would explain why they did not show up to greet Ash like most of the other Pokemon did. And also, Tracy is mentioned and shown briefly here. We last saw Tracy in the final episode of the Black and White series, so it has been a while. Goh wonders if something unusual happened with Infernape, and Professor Oak says that Infernape battled Charizard, which is a battle I wish we could have seen since it was surely awesome. Infernape also battled Pignite, Talonflame, and Quilava, so Infernape battled Ash's other Fire-type Pokemon. However, it is worth noting that Torkoal, which is of course another one of Ash's Fire-type Pokemon, is excluded here. Torkoal is the only one of Ash's Fire-type Pokemon that does not appear in this episode, excluding Incineroar of course. I noted that Torkoal did not appear either when all the Pokemon gathered, which was weird enough, but it is even worse that Torkoal is excluded when talking about Ash's Fire-type Pokemon. Now I knew at this point that Infernape was obviously training and or testing its strength, and what better opponents for this than other Fire-type Pokemon. This reminded me of Ash's Charizard back when it was still rebellious. Whenever it was used to battle a Fire-type Pokemon, it would listen to Ash. These were the only times that Charizard would do what Ash told it to do. I guess that Fire-type Pokemon can only get fired up when they face a fellow Fire-type Pokemon. So Ash says that Infernape was probably training, and Goh says that training is not a reason to leave. Therefore, they don't know why Infernape left. My first thought was that maybe Infernape lost against Ash's other Fire-type Pokemon, or maybe he did not battle as well as he hoped he would. So Infernape left because he wanted to find a place where he could train hard. However, then I remembered that Moltres will also appear in this episode, and Moltres is a Fire-type Pokemon as well, and thus I realized that Infernape probably left because he somehow sensed that Moltres would appear and he decided to go challenge it. So Ash and Goh decide to search for Infernape. Now I feel that this was a missed opportunity because Ash could have taken at least one of his other Pokemon with him. Said Pokemon would help with the search, and they would get more screen time as a result. But I guess that this would take some of the spotlight away from Infernape, which is probably why this did not happen. As they search for Infernape, Ash and Goh encounter a Pidgeotto, which Goh tries to catch but he fails, and Pidgeotto uses Gust or Whirlwind. Ash and Goh roll away as a result, and they end up bumping into an Onix, which Goh tries to catch as well, but once again, Goh fails, and Onix also decides to retaliate. However, before it can attack, Onix is hit by Hydro Pump. Ash and Goh turn around to see who saved them, and they see a Blastoise, which Ash recognizes immediately, and indeed, Gary soon reveals himself. Ash and Gary greet each other, and Ash wonders why Gary is here, since he is supposed to be in Sinnoh. Gary says that this is old news. He is now traveling and researching Pokemon all over the world. But something came up which brought him back to Kanto. Ash wonders what this something is, but Gary says never mind that and he approaches Goh. Gary tells Ash, are you not going to introduce us? So Ash introduces Gary to Goh by saying that Gary is a longtime friend and rival. They show some key moments from the past which have been reanimated to match Pokemon Journey's new art style. Gary says that he heard that Ash got himself a buddy, so he wanted to know what kind of person this buddy is. Goh looks away and he says that I am who I am. Again, Goh clearly shows that he lacks confidence. Gary then says with a cocky smile that he does not care about Goh's personality. Yikes. Instead, he wants to know how skilled of a trainer Goh is. Gary says that if he is going to accept that Ash has a new buddy, then said new buddy must be at least as skilled as Gary. Goh wonders what Gary means and Gary says that Goh is not qualified to be Ash's buddy. Ouch. This frustrates Goh, who exclaims, what is wrong with this guy? While Gary pretends that he said nothing wrong. Ash tries to calm Goh down by saying that Gary has always been like this. Now it's clear that Gary is out for blood. Goh's blood specifically. It's interesting that in episode 37, Kiawe also wondered if Goh was worthy of being Ash's friend, and Kiawe even battled Goh in order to test him. This never happened in previous series. Whenever an old traveling companion returned to the anime, they would not wonder if Ash's new friends were worthy of Ash. They would all just get along. So why does this keep happening to Goh? Are they trying to hammer home the fact that Goh lacks confidence, self-esteem, and ambition? Are they trying to tell us that yes, Goh is not a very good trainer? He lacks experience and yet he keeps succeeding because of pure luck, meaning that his success is not earned, and he is not as good as he thinks he is. So in order to show this to us, they have Ash's old friends and rivals question if Goh is worthy of being with Ash. Is he worthy of being a protagonist, essentially? Now I am sure that most of us don't need Gary or Kiawe to point out Goh's flaws. We can see them clear as day, but it is great and refreshing to see characters in the anime that do have some sense, and they can call out Goh's faults. It's also possible that since this is the first series where Ash only has one traveling companion, Goh is questioned and tested because as Ash's only traveling companion in this series, he has much more responsibility than previous companions had. And since he is technically Ash's only friend in this series, you could say that Goh must be a best friend, meaning he has to be more capable, reliable, and confident than previous companions, which he is not. Hence why he keeps getting roasted by Ash's past friends and rivals. Also, I want to point out that since Gary is also traveling the world now and he is questioning if Goh is worthy of being Ash's buddy, I can only imagine how great Pokemon Journeys would be if Gary was Ash's companion instead of Goh. And I also want to point out that Gary and Kiawe must really think highly of Ash since they don't want to entrust Ash to someone that is not up to par. So Ash wonders once again what brought Gary to Kanto, and Gary reveals that he is here for Moltres. According to his data and his observations, Moltres will appear soon in a valley that is nearby. Ash is amazed that Gary was able to figure this out, and Goh vainly says that he could have done the same thing. Give it up, Goh. You can't measure up to Gary. Gary wonders what Ash is doing, and Ash says that they are looking for Infernape. Gary mentions that he remembers Infernape from the Sinnoh League, and he recalls Ash's battle against Paul, which was also reanimated. Oh, the nostalgia continues. Gary wonders if Ash has any clues, and Ash mentions that Infernape battled his other fire-type Pokemon. Gary concludes that Infernape probably went to the same valley he was going to, and so he decides to go there with Ash. Gary says that the area they are going to is dangerous, and he says, can you keep up? Ash says that of course he can, but Gary says that it's not Ash he is worried about. And he looks at Goh, who says that if Ash can do it, then he can do it too. Gary then says to Goh, "Don't disappoint me." It's nice to see that Gary has not changed one bit. He is still an unstoppable roast and trigger machine just as he has always been. So, Ash, Gary, and Goh make their way up to the valley where Moltres will appear with some intense rock climbing. Gary explains that this area was created by magma, which flowed through the area once, and he wonders if Goh noticed anything. Goh says that the area was probably a volcano once, meaning that it is the perfect place for Moltres to appear. Gary says that Goh is correct, but he missed something, and he shows Goh Moltres' Pokédex entry, which states that Moltres' appearance indicates that spring is coming. Goh notices that there are spring flowers in the area. Gary says that he used this knowledge to help him determine where Moltres will appear. I love that Gary keeps testing Goh every chance he gets. Gary goes on to say that now he has another piece of data. Infernape. Gary has seen Infernape a lot whenever he visited Professor Oak's lab. Infernape was always working on becoming stronger, so Infernape is probably aiming for greater heights by challenging Moltres. Gary turns to Goh once again to see if Goh understands what Gary means, and Goh says that Infernape probably sensed that Moltres would appear since Infernape is a fire-type Pokemon like Moltres. Gary adds that if they find Infernape here, then Moltres will definitely appear. As soon as he says this, Infernape starts calling for Moltres by roaring while hanging from a tree. Ash calls out to Infernape, who happily rushes towards Ash to greet him. Ash wonders if Infernape is really here to challenge Moltres, and Infernape confirms that it is. Moltres then also appears. Gary says that Moltres likely responded to Infernape's wish. Infernape roars at Moltres like, "Face me!" Ash also tells Moltres to battle them. Moltres then roars back like, "Come at me," and the battle begins. Infernape uses Flamethrower, which Moltres easily takes, and it even absorbs the flames. Moltres then attacks with Fire Spin, which surrounds Infernape in flames. Infernape uses Dig to escape the Fire Spin, and then it uses Mach Punch, which Moltres easily avoids. Moltres then uses Air Slash, and Infernape counters with Flare Blitz. Both moves clash, but Air Slash overpowers Flare Blitz, and Infernape is launched towards a rock. Infernape is clearly hurt, but he refuses to back down. Now, it would have been very cool if Blaze activated right here, which Infernape would have used to turn the tide of the battle, but sadly this does not happen, and the battle ends here for Infernape. Moltres soon attacks the injured Infernape, so Gary sends out Blastoise, who uses Hydro Pump to stop Moltres. However, despite taking a direct hit from a water-type move, Moltres is still fine. Moltres uses Fire Spin to surround Blastoise with flames. Blastoise uses Rapid Spin to break through the flames, and it spins towards a wall. Blastoise uses the wall as a foothold to launch itself towards Moltres with Skull Bash. Moltres avoids the attack, but Blastoise uses Water Pulse in midair, which lands a clean hit on Moltres. This surprises Ash and Goh, and indeed, it's nice to see that Gary is still a skilled battler. Moltres then starts glowing, and its flames grow to be massive. Moltres ends up using Burn Up. Blastoise tries to use Hydro Pump to stop Moltres, but Burn Up vaporizes the Hydro Pump, and it hits Blastoise directly. Ash and Goh wonder what Burn Up is, so Gary explains what it is, which surprises Ash and Goh. This is actually the first time that Burn Up has been used in the anime, so it is understandable that Ash and Goh don't know what it is. Blastoise was able to withstand the Burn Up, but Moltres uses Hurricane next, which Blastoise tries to block with Rapid Spin, but it can't, so Blastoise is knocked out. Goh says that it is his turn now, so he sends out Cinderace, who uses Pyro Ball. But Moltres avoids the attack and it uses Air Slash. Ash and Gary look at each other like, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Gary sends out Electivire and he calls for Thunder. Ash tells Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, both electric attacks clash with Air Slash, and they manage to break through, and thus, Moltres takes a direct hit, which makes it fall towards the ground, but it soon recovers and it flies away, leaving behind a feather. It is surprising that in the end, no one tried to catch Moltres. Gary picks up the feather and Ash tells him that Moltres is getting away. Gary says that it's fine, his objective was the feather all along. Ash wonders if Goh recorded a video of Moltres, and Goh screams because he realizes that he did not press record. Gary says that Goh should not rush things, and Goh tells him to mind his own business. They are still at odds with each other. A Corbinite with a briefcase then appears, and Gary places the feather in the briefcase. He tells Corbinite to look after the feather, and Corbinite flies away. Gary is clearly sending the feather to someone via Corbinite. The episode then cuts to Professor Oak's lab. Infernape happily talks to Ash's fire-type Pokemon and Bulbasaur about something. I guess that Bulbasaur is an honorary member of the Fire Squad, or Bulbasaur is a stand-in for Torkoal, who is still absent from the fire-type Pokemon gathering. Infernape is probably telling them about his reason for going off on his own, and about what happened with Moltres. I would like to think that Charizard would be like, "Oh, you battled Moltres? That's cool. Well, I actually defeated an Articuno, which is even cooler." Professor Oak says that it is surprising that Infernape went to challenge Moltres, and Ash says that he was shocked as well, and that battling Moltres was awesome. He then turns to Gary, who is talking with someone on the phone about the feather he got. He is talking to Asahi, who is introduced right here, though they don't mention her name. Ash wonders who Gary is talking to, and Professor Oak reveals that Gary is participating in Project Mew, and his trial was to acquire a feather from Moltres. Project Mew is definitely a serious undertaking if they ask applicants to get a feather from a legendary Pokemon in order to join. It's clear that they want skilled trainers only. Also, since Gary is participating in Project Mew, this might not be the last time we see him in this series, which is nice. Asahi confirms that she got the feather, and she sends Gary a token, which proves that he completed the trial. Gary then turns to Goh, and he says that he heard that Goh declined the invitation to Project Mew. Gary says that this is a wise decision because a trainer at Goh's level could not possibly clear the missions. Man, talk about a nasty burn. Not even Moltres could deliver a burn like this. Gary then bids farewell to Professor Oak and Ash. Ash wonders where Gary will go now, and Gary says that he wants to research everything that has to do with Pokemon, and so he has to research Mew, who holds the genes of every Pokemon. His dream might seem impossible, but he will not give up. Ash says that he will cheer Gary on, and Gary leaves after thanking Ash for his support. So Gary's dream is very similar to Goh's dream, and Goh was noticeably bothered when Gary was talking about his dream. Goh probably felt bad because Gary is pursuing his dream, a dream very similar to Goh's dream with such determination, while Goh does not have the same level of passion. Ash goes on to say that Gary is very cool due to his grandiose dream, and this also stings Goh, who ends up declaring that he will join Project Mew as well. It's nice that Goh decides to finally do something bold and ambitious. It's nice that he finally found the motivation to actively chase his dream, but I do feel that it is kind of lame that his motivation and drive originated from Goh's desire to one-up Gary, and his desire to be praised by Ash. Yes, rivals do make you want to try harder, and Professor Oak does say that Gary will be pleased to hear that Goh will participate in Project Mew. That Gary purposely provoked Goh so that Goh would decide to participate. But rivals make you want to improve when you are already trying hard. In Goh's case, Gary makes him want to take an actual first step. It's like being in a race. If Ash and Goh were both in a race, Ash would be running as fast as possible, aiming to cross the finish line as soon as he can, while Goh would be walking without a care in the world, or he would be standing at the starting line thinking that he can go as slow as he wants, or he can start whenever he wants. and he will reach the goal eventually. He has no drive to push himself or to try. Now, if a rival like Gary also joins the race, Ash would run even faster because he still wants to win. He still wants to reach the goal as fast as possible. The difference is that now he has a rival that he wants to defeat as well, so he has to try even harder, while Go would transition from walking into sprinting, or he would decide to finally start the race because he does not want to stay behind. He does not want to lose to someone else that is doing the same thing, and not because he wants to reach the goal. So basically, a rival should make you try harder. Yes, you don't want to lose, but you also want to fulfill your objective. A rival should not make you want to start trying. A rival should not make you decide to do something simply because you don't want to lose or because you cannot stand the thought that there is someone better. So while it is nice that Go was motivated by Gary and he finally wants to do something meaningful, it does feel like Go is being motivated in the wrong way. It feels like he just wants to be cooler or better than Gary, and he wants Ash to praise him, when he should be motivated because he wants to fulfill his dream faster or better than someone else. It feels like Go is being childish and a sore loser, but that's just my opinion. So Ash says that he will cheer for Go as well, and Go says that he feels that he lost to Gary. Jeez, you think? He says that he might not be able to win against Gary now, but he will try harder, and someday he will hold the future in his hands. And that's the episode. Overall, this was an amazing episode. It was great to see Ash's old Pokemon again, though unfortunately some of them did not appear. And from the ones that did appear, only Infernape had a big role in the episode. But it was still nice to see them, and I hope that we get to see them again soon, and hopefully some of them will have a chance to shine like Infernape did. It was cool to see Gary again, and it is nice that he is as skilled, cocky, and as smart as ever. It's interesting that he is now Go's rival. I love the fact that someone finally pointed out some of Go's faults, and Gary was able to motivate Go, and thus Go may actually start showing some real character growth and development in the future, when he undergoes the trials and missions that he has to accomplish in order to join Project Mew. Go will actually have to earn his success for once, or at least I hope that this is the case. I would not be surprised if Go completes all the missions by throwing a Pokeball. The battle against Moltres was also very cool, and it was great to see Infernape in action once again, even though the battle was unfortunately too short, which takes me to my one gripe with this episode. This episode was, like several others before it, rushed. I hate to sound like a broken record, but it has to be said. Pokemon Journeys has, on paper, some of the best episodes ever in the history of the Pokemon anime. However, in practice, these episodes end up falling just short of being truly breathtaking, because they are rushed and thus their potential is squandered. Episodes like this and episode 65 would have benefited from having more time to properly reintroduce characters that we have not seen in the anime in years, and from having the time to really flesh out the amazing moments and situations contained within each episode. But alas, they were not given more time, and so they end up not reaching the epic heights that they could have reached. Now, don't get me wrong, they are still amazing episodes without a doubt, and I will happily take more episodes like this, but there is no denying that they could have been so much better if they were given more time. But that's the video. As always, leave your own thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and would like to see more like it, then please consider subscribing to my channel. I love Pokemon, and I love making videos on both the anime and the games. Also, please consider clicking the links on screen so that you can check out more videos like this right away. Thank you very much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.